All right, good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing tonight? Welcome to the North Carolina Cryptid and Paranormal Project. I have a special guest on tonight. I've actually known this person for a good amount. I've probably known her since 2016. We were actually we were admins together in a Sasquatch Chronicles group back in the day, and that group kind of went down the drain for kind of like a self inflicted self group member ran it to the ground, and it just kind of went haywire. But what's going on at LT, Mr. Rick? Good to see you there. But yeah, so honestly, this is also going to get broadcasted to YouTube after tonight. I will download it and I'll upload it to YouTube. Um, after tonight, I need you to lower your volume, Laura.
Okay.
We're getting an echo on your end, Laura. I just need you to turn down your
Yeah,
volume a little bit.
I turned it off.
All
Sorry.
right. No, you're fine. All right, Dave from Texas, Lori, hey wife, what's going on? Best producer, my wife, and David from Texas. But so yeah, Laura Greenlee's a good friend of mine. I've known her for quite some time, since 2016. We've been in groups together, and I've always had her help me with moderating because she's good. She's Cherokee blooded, Native American, which she has some good knowledge from the native aspect of all these cryptids. She's had encounters. She's had people in her area tell her encounters. She knows about the Bigfoot. She's seen Bigfoot. She knows about the little people. She has some stories about that. And I'm just glad finally got to have you on tonight because I've been talking about it for a while. Like I gotta have you on, Laura. I gotta have you on talking about some of the stuff that happened over the years, and finally got you. So without further ado, I'm gonna turn it over to you and welcome, Laura.
Thank you. Sorry about any way I move. It's making me into the matrix. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I can't really see anybody to say hi. So hello, everybody, and I'm a nervous wreck. He's really calmed me down a lot. But I've been wanting to go live on a, but nobody wanted me but Tom. So so I was just like, okay, I think I have a little I could tell. So I'm ready. I'm ready to share.
Okay, well, what kind of got you? I'll start with the whole like the who, what, when, or why. What got you interested into the subject of like the Bigfoot, the dog man, all the hairy, scary, cryptid stuff? What kind of got you interested in wanting to be involved with this kind of field? Because not everyone just gets out of bed, wakes up one day, and says, "Hey, I want to start investigating or just learning about Bigfoot and dog man, the Shobashito, and the little people, the Gugwi, the Induendes, all that. What kind of got you interested into that?
Okay, I don't know what brought the fear in me of Bigfoot whenever I was a kid, but we always spent the summer at my grandma and them's house. So whenever I say Piney, that's where I grew up at. That's my our rural country area home, and so we spent every summer with our grannies, which was the best time of my life because our home life was pretty. We had a stern military stepdad, so I always look forward to going to my granny and grandpa's. And I was a grandpa's girl, so I was outside. I was shooting the guns. I was fishing. I was crawdad hunting. I was out in the woods.
So
So,
you were the tomboy doing all the stuff that the boys were doing because you didn't care. You wanted to just have fun, right?
oh, I wasn't sitting inside sewing at that time. I am now, but not then. No, it was outside for me. But I don't know what brought the fear of it on, but I've always had a fear of Bigfoot. And so I would sleep with my grandpa because grandpa had the guns above the bed, the gun rack that
Mm-hmm.
you always, the old timers always had. He had a shotgun and he had his rifle. So I slept with grandpa. And I would tell him, Grandpa, if Bigfoot ever comes to get me, I don't know why, it wasn't going to get anybody else, but I always had a fear that he was going to come and get me. And anyways, and I think now that there's something to that, after hearing a lot of other encounters and stuff, that something kept it stuck with me all my life. But he would say, "Oh, there ain't nothing out there." But I would, in my dreams, I would see the Bigfoot walking by the curtains at nighttime, and they would be big old shadows of Bigfoots. And so I was scared of them. And so growing up, and then I'm grown. Well, uh, my husband, okay, the girl's daddy's name is Dennis. He's the one who I saw the Bigfoot with. Okay, well, he passed away on us in 1995.
Sorry to
But
hear that.
thank you. Um, so he would take me camping at the lake. Okay, and we'd all, we'd have a grand old day. But as soon as it got nighttime, and when we was settled in the tent, I would tell him, okay, there's something out there, and that ain't no raccoon. That ain't. We got to go now. Bigfoot's out there. And he would get so mad at me, but he would literally pack everything up and would leave in the middle of the night time. So it's always been with me. Okay. Yeah.
So
I don't know
these
what it
dreams
was
you
a
had,
fear.
these dreams you had. Sorry to cut you off, but these dreams you say you had. Do you think they were really dreams, or you think maybe you were kind of seeing them and you were half asleep? You said you were like they're walking by your window and that kind of thing. That's kind of crazy.
It
So
was so real. I remember them because, see, we had a big yard light, and it's still there to this day. And in Grandpa's room, the yard light was right above his bedroom windows. And, somebody walks by there, it makes a shadow of, whatever's walking by. I just remember in my dreams all the time, I would see a Bigfoot shadow. And I would be like 8, 9 years old. And I was deathly afraid of it. So I don't know what brought that on. So that was the fear that I had. So then, me and Dennis is married and everything. And well, like I said, I'm the fisherman in the family. So he would load up our ice chest with beer and stuff. And I didn't really drink very much then. We married young. It worked for us. But anyways, he would do the drinking while I was doing the fishing, okay? And so we would go to different little community areas by our house. And like, we lived at Piney. Well, the next surrounding community was called Chalk Bluff, which is just little bitty areas, just different names. And so we'd go to Chalk Bluff, and anybody who knows where I'm from, they'll know where I'm talking about. And there's a place that you could fish, but you'd have to walk down a trail, and it would lead into a small, like, peninsula island. And you could set your chairs there, and you could fish. And you'd get crappie, big, big fish. Well, this is the first thing that happened to us. We was fishing, and I was fishing away. I was catching them left and right, left and right. Well, all of a sudden, this big old rock came from across the pond,
oh wow.
and it fell into the middle of the pond, and it came from the right of me. And I looked and I knew it wasn't no big old fish because I watched it go, because I'm facing that way. And I looked at Dennis and I said, "Did you see that?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "That was a rock." I said, "That was a big rock." Because little people throw rocks at you, okay? If you've caught your fill of fish, they'll tell you, "Okay, you caught enough. You need to go home." And I thought that's what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, "That wasn't no little person, Dennis. That was a huge rock."
So you're saying
Well,
this rock was probably like the size of a softball because it made that kerplunk sound when it hit the water.
I'm talking a boulder. I'm talking
Okay,
a
something
big
about a 12,
6 stone,
12 and a half by 12 and a half, just a big.
big old creek rock
Okay.
that you would have to have some oomph to get
Mm-hmm.
it to go that high in the air and go down right in the middle of the pond. You know? You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? But I didn't have anything. This was back in um Mandy was born in 80, 85, 85, yeah. And so this was probably 86, 87s. So, we didn't have computers. We didn't have anything, nobody's encounters to go by. It's just what people,
Right.
I only had what, if people told me something and nobody hardly talked about it. So I didn't know what the heck through this. And I guess, and see, Dennis is 6'3". He's a big man like you, Tom. I mean, big. I wasn't scared of nothing when we was out because he was a mean guy, and they called him biggest meanest, and so I was safe with him. Well, he said we need to go, and I was like, okay.
He
Did
knew
that
he knew
scare
time to
you?
bail.
Oh, let's go.
He knew it was time to get out of Dodge. He probably had that gut feeling that it's fight or flight, and he didn't have no weapons at the time, so it's just time to go.
I guess he thought whatever threw that was bigger than me.
Yeah.
And I was like, if you're scared, I'm scared. You
That's
got
fine.
to tell me twice.
He just said Sasquatch mad. You were catching all the fish. You were taking all his food.
I
So he threw a
guess
rock
so.
at you. They probably threw a rock, saying, "Hey, get out of here, because we don't want you catching no more fish, because we need some for us."
Yes, because it literally, like I said, it came from the right
Mhm.
and it was high in the air and then boom, right down in front of where I was fishing. Just smack dab in the middle of that pond. And I'm like, oh, and it, left a big old splash. And so we got out of there. But that was the first time that something messed with us.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised that they didn't try to steal your fish. If you had that many fish, I'm surprised they didn't try to take them from you.
Yeah. Well, I had my stringer right there, beside
Mm-hmm.
the bank where I was sitting. So I just grabbed my fish and he loaded us up and off we went. But yeah, it wasn't, I thought, yeah, okay, the little people are telling us we've caught our share. It's time for us to go because Greenie, she would go fishing by herself down on a trail. Remember, I was telling you about the little people's home by our house? Well, Greenie would go. We have a creek that runs all across Piney, okay? And I think it comes from the Illinois. I think, I'm pretty sure. And anyways, so it goes all across Piney, the whole Piney. Well, Greenie would go down to her fishing spot, and she'd come back, and it'd be dusk or whatever, and she'd be coming up the driveway, and I said, "You're already back?" And she said, "Yeah. They told me I needed to go home." My granny's full blood, little bitty Indian lady, and I'm like, "What?" And after whenever I first heard her talking about it when I was little, I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" So then after it just was told, things happen all the time. You don't think about it no more because it's the norm. And she said, "Yeah, they told me they kept throwing little pebbles at me, and so it's time to go home." So
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, and so
That's
she'd
crazy.
load up hers and she'd just come right back home. But
Wow.
so, do you want me to tell about leave my Bigfoot encounter for the end? Because it's not really that magnificent, but I mean, it was for me.
You can go right
Or do you
into it.
want me
It's
to?
fine because we
I'm
can
talking about
we can ask
Granny,
questions.
huh?
We can go into the Bigfoot one because I'm sure someone will have some questions about it too as well. So with descriptive
Okay.
questions and stuff. So go ahead, go for it.
Okay. So over the years, we had things, just like the rock throwing, hearing something come down the creek way where we lived across the creek from Granny's before Dennis passed away. And at nighttime, we'd be sitting out on our porch and having a beer and, just listening. And we'd have company over or something. We're all sitting on the porch or whatever. And so we would hear the cows get all, riled up. Well, something you could tell it was walking down the creek bed because you could hear it wasn't really yells. It would be like, oh, I, I, it wasn't no howl either. It would just be, you would hear something going down the creek bed, and you'd know exactly how far it went and where it was at that time, because it walked down through there, and it would get the livestock where we rented from, their livestock all messed up. And so we had that always going on at our house. Well, Dennis worked pole barns. He built pole barns, and he had to go off. And most of the time it was off to Texas that he was going. And so he worked with the crew, and they'd been doing a lot of work, and he'd been gone for quite a while. And he had asked me. He said, "We just had our second baby. She was born in '89, and I always got my years mixed up. But she was a baby whenever I left her with Sue and them, so it had to have been the year of '90." And he said, "Will you go with us? Will you go out on the road with us and cook for us? Make some beans, potatoes, some skillet bread out there, some hot dogs or whatever." And I said, "Yeah, that would be fun, because I've been on jobs with him before." And so we went, and we was coming, and I wish I knew the city that we was coming to in Texas, but and there's the men that was with us are alive today. I just need to get a hold of the crew boss and ask him, what city was that? I want to know. And so Dennis was driving, and we'd been driving for some time. The three guys was in the back, and I'm just going to only call them by their first name. So the three guys was in the back, and Dennis asked me, he said, "Can you stay awake and keep talking to me so I don't fall asleep? We're almost on the job site." And I said, "Sure." And hell, I can talk all the time, so no problem there. And so anyways, we're talking away, and it's just starting to get morning. The sun is just barely coming up, and we're on this small country road. I just remember there was no houses around, no houses, and I forget when the last house that I saw, because I was like thinking they're going to build a pole barn here. It's out by itself. Well, we was just coming up, and I looked down the road, and there was a dead large tree stump in the middle of this rural country road, okay? And I'm like, I looked at Dennis and I said, "Why did they do that?" I said, "Why did they build the road around it instead of just moving that big old trunk, that dead tree from the road? Why did they do that?" And he looked at me, and he looked down at what I was looking at, because he was looking for signs on the right of where we were going to pull off at, okay? So he's trying to find the exact area we needed to. I didn't know at that time we was right on the job spot. So he stopped the truck, and he looked at it, and he said, "I don't think that's a dead tree in the middle of the road." And I said, "Well, what else could it be? Look how tall it is." And I said, "It doesn't make any sense." And so we're sitting there talking, and I'm pointing at it, and he's really looking, and it turns around and it looks at us. And I'm like, oh, I'm sure I said a few choice words.
I'm sure you did, yeah.
Because my life fear just turned around and looked at me. Wow. And I looked at Dennis, and I said, "What is that?" And it like turned full at us. You know how like they say that it can't turn its head; it's got to turn its whole body. That's what it did, and it wasn't didn't even look like the dead tree anymore that it looked like to begin with.
They can't. They can't turn their neck all the way because their trapezius muscles are so big that they can only turn their head like so much. So they have to move their body to see, like, because they're like, they're so massive. So that's what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, and see, I didn't know any of that stuff either till now, but that's how I always, described it that way. I never knew all of that stuff then, but I turn and I wake up the guys in the back, And we had one guy, and Jake. He's a little Indian guy, squirrely little Indian guy, just so funny. And well, he was scared of everything. He'd get spooked on. We'd be at the lake or whatever, telling spooky stories. And, he would get scared. But he's a mean little Indian guy. Well, he woke up. He woke up the other two guys, and we all saw it. Well, as we're looking at it, it just, after it looked at all of us, there's a distance, I'm going to say, probably a quarter of a mile of where it was from us to the truck. It just saunters into the woods like nothing, like it didn't care. And, oh well, and just takes off into the woods, just like 1, 2, 3 steps, and it's into the wood part. And I'm like, oh my God. It became real then whenever it walked into the woods.
Okay.
So Dennis, instead of leaving and getting the hell out of Dodge, he pulls in right there at this field. And I said, what are you doing? Go. And he said, no, we're at the job site. And I was like, what the hell? We're at the job site and we just saw that?
So this thing was right by the job site where he pulled into, was where it walked into the wood line.
That's why he had been slowing down, because we was getting close to the job site, and that's why he was looking off to that way, trying to find the exact area. And he didn't even notice it in front of us down there. I noticed it before him because we was right on the job site, and I'm like, hell no, And they had a gun. I said, I ain't getting out. I said, and if y'all's getting out, you leave the gun in the truck with me. A 22. At that time, I still didn't know that would have done nothing to that big old thing, but made it mad.
That'd be like a baby gun or something.
It got me through. Well, this barn with 2 sheds and 4 whirlybirds got built in 2.5 days, which would have took close to 4 on any other thing. The men wouldn't talk about it. We would be, I was there to cook, so I would be doing the cooking after they was working, and I'd try to bring it up because I wanted confirmation. Y'all did see exactly what I saw. I knew Dennis did, but I wanted it from them. And they wouldn't talk about it. And they would be like, I don't know what that was. I think it's a man. I think there's somebody messing with us on this job site, like at 4 in the morning, right when it's starting to get dawn. Somebody's out there in a suit that's 9 to 10 foot. It had to have been a big one, Tom.
Wow.
It was huge. You could just tell it was huge.
They were in denial. They probably just didn't want to believe what it was because, it would have ruined their whole, perception of thinking of how the world is these days,
Yeah. And I think one of them still is in denial because whenever I was working at the tax office in our small town, he came in and he came in to pay his taxes, and I said, "Hey, do you remember what we saw in Texas that time?" And he looked at me and he said, "Yeah." And I said, "It was Bigfoot, wasn't it?" And he said, "Laura, I don't know what we saw, but I can't explain it. I can't explain to this day what we saw." And it was like years and years. I hadn't seen them, gosh, and Dennis had already passed away and everything after I asked him that question. But so we'd be there, and I'd still, when it was time to go to bed, I'd go and sleep in the truck because I ain't, And so we got through that job, and on the way home, the guys finally started talking about it. Mm-hmm. Finally. They opened up, and I guess they just needed to get that job done and get out of there without spooking me any more than what I was. And I would cry, and I would just sit there, and I'd be like, did y'all see that? I need to know. but I couldn't really get them to talk about it. And they're all strong men. You know what I'm saying? Each one was strong in their own right. That
I mean, these were
they
construction
afraid of
worker
much.
guys.
Yeah, they ain't afraid of much. But we got the hell out of there. That barn got done, and Albert, the boss, said on the way home, he said, Laura, he said, I don't know what it was. He said, I and all me and Jake's like, it was Bigfoot. And Dennis, he's like, man, that whatever it was, I don't want to see one again. So it was huge. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't know that, okay, they come to you, that they knew somebody was already out there on that country road. They know you're coming before. I didn't know none of that. I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. So
These things can see you miles. They could probably hear the truck, 2 miles down the road before you even get close to where he was. So that's the thing. And the funny thing is, you said that the one guy was like in denial. When I had my encounter, you remember my encounter in '98 in Canada when I was bear hunting, because I always talked about it in the old Sasquatch Chronicles group. It was my brother with me, my older brother, and he's always still in denial about that encounter because he didn't want to believe it because he's like one of those diehard hunter outdoorsmen. And
yeah,
the way I see it is, if he believes that that was Bigfoot what we saw, then he won't want to be going in the woods anymore on his own in the middle of the day before it gets dark, or dawn before the light comes up in the woods, because he's so used to doing that that'll ruin his whole perception of hunting in the woods of something that he loves. So that's
yeah.
why I believe that he's in denial, because he just doesn't want to accept that everything's going to change if he does.
And see, all of them men, are hunters. They're all hunters. That's
Mm-hmm.
what the men do in our county is hunt deer. Hunt wild turkeys, hunt squirrels for supper. You're out in the woods for something all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my Bigfoot encounter, and that was I think so. I'm gonna fast forward to we're still that was years ago. Okay, so then it was in 90. Dennis passed away in 95. So it was in the year of like 95. We're at the place that was above the creek, across the creek from Greenie. Well, me and Dennis, we was, like I said, we married young, and we would split up and get back together, split up, and I'd always run to my granny and grandpa's, and because I wanted to, Granny, I'm gonna have to stay here for a while, when me and Dennis are fighting again, and me and the kids would load up and go to Granny and grandpa's. I was real
Right.
bad about that, and so Grandpa loved us there, though. And so, anyways, she finally got to, over the time, Dennis would try to come over, and he would try to spend the night while we're split up. And I said, Granny said, you can't do that no more. You can't do that. You need to go where you're going and go. Well,
Mm-hmm.
uh, me and Dad was down at the creek, and everybody meets up at the Piney Slab, okay? During the summertime, everybody shows up and visits, and gets cooled off at the creek. And well, me and Dad's there, and Dennis pulls up, and I thought, oh God, here we go. There's Dennis, and him and Dad, they always got along, and they're just talking away and everything. And we sat and we swam and drank some beer and stuff. And I said, well, we're going home, and I said, remember, you can't fall on me. Granny said you can't stay with us. And he said, well, I'm just going to stay here tonight. He said, I wanted to camp out anyways. And he said, I'm just going to stay here. And I said, well, why don't you, just go on up to the house? And he said, well, I'm just going to, just stay here. And so anyways, uh, I go home, and okay, our house is on like a hill that had a roundabout drive of gravel, you know,
Mhm.
and so but it's a pretty steep hill up to our house, my granny's house, our family
Okay.
home now. Um, and Granny would leave the doors open, you know, the screen door, you know, and everything, and you could hear the outside. And, well, I don't know what me and Granny was watching, but we're in the living room, and I heard this. You know how people describe the the woods? It sounds like somebody's running, like the jungles. You can actually hear the feet. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? At that at that time, I thought I heard Dennis running because I didn't know. Now I know exactly what I heard running. But me and Granny's sitting there, and I'm by the door because I'm by the phone, and so I always sit by the phone so I could answer it. And anyways, uh, I heard something running real hard, and I'm like, "What the hell?" And I heard Dennis holler, and I'm like, "What in the world?" And I open the screen door, and I go out on the porch, and I'm like, "What the hell are you doing?" He's running up the dirt road, and I'm like, "I heard you running all the way from there." And he's like, let me in," and I'm like, "No!" And so then I get mad. I'd already told him, you know, you can't come over. Greeny said no. And so I'm kind of mad at him. And he said, "Laura, something's chasing me.
Mm.
Let me in." And we're sitting there, and I'm like, "Bullshit. There ain't nothing chasing you." Well, I'm hearing that footsteps again, and it goes across the field, and we hear this big old holler. And this holler
Wow.
scream was like nothing I ever heard in my life. I've never heard it again, except for maybe whenever whatever it was chasing the horses. But this scream was the eeriest scream ever, and it screamed and jumped back into the creek, and it was like a car got. You know how like you could like throw a car into it. I've never done that, but you know, you could just imagine the big splash.
Mhm.
That's it was a big old splash. Whatever jumped back into the creek that night was pissed that it didn't get Dennis.
Well, I
Now
bet.
I know. Now I know that something was trying to tell him. It wasn't about me. It wasn't they wasn't coming after me. It was trying to tell him something. You know,
Could have been
maybe
telling
that
him. Could have been telling him to get out. You know, stay away.
yeah,
Don't come back.
it could have been my protector
Yeah.
that protected me since I was a child. Because you know we had a volatile relationship, and whatever it was after him. He said, "Laura," he said, "I was sitting on the creek bank, and it's scary how he says it too, because he was genuinely scared, and he wasn't drunk. Well, if he had been drunk, it scared him sober. Uh, and and we all could tell he was sober. And he was telling us that he has long legs. Like I said, he's 6'3", and he would said he with his jeans and stuff on, he was running through the creek, and it would go slosh. You know how like your boots and all of that's going to get caught up in the water.
Yeah.
He said whatever it was behind him was just going slosh, slosh, slosh. No problem.
Hmm.
It had no problem going through that water like he did. And he said when he got across that creek and into the field, he was able to get a foot on ground is whenever he got some speed up, because it was right behind him, and it was right behind him. Now I know. Now what I heard was that thing chasing him. I didn't hear Dennis. I heard it. But that was freaky. And I looked at Greenie, and I said, "Greenie," because she was out on the porch with us, and she told us to come in. And she was just like, mm-mm. You
She
know,
knew.
when
She
my
knew what was
granny
going
does that,
on.
it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with it. I
She knew.
definitely don't want nothing to do with it,
Yeah,
because you know I rely on Granny to, hey, whatever you gotta do, here, go smoke your cigarettes or whatever you do, go around the house. because I would always tease her. I called her a witch. I said, "Go do your witchy stuff."
Oh wow.
And so, yeah. Um,
Um, if you want to answer some questions, I'm sure people would be dying to ask some questions about some of these encounters. So if anyone has some questions, drop them in. You don't have to put them all in capital. Just put like a Q with a dash or something next to it, so it's easier to type out. Because I know a lot of people have phones, and it's a real pain in the ass to type everything capital on an iPhone, or especially when you got fat fingers, or you type a lot and it always comes out the wrong way. So go ahead and put some questions out there if you want. Just put a Q, um, and we'll get to them. But yeah, that's crazy. It's almost like they knew that he was out there, and it's almost like they were kind of running him off the property because they didn't want him there.
yeah,
Maybe they
like he
knew
had bad intentions. Like
bad
he
intent.
had bad intentions for sticking around. Like, he was always, like maybe he was going to ruin something that I had planned. I don't know. I don't. Now I think that they because that wasn't the only message that he got. So then now I know why he stayed at the creek. We hadn't rented that home yet. We got back together after that, and we found that home across the street so I could be close to Granny and Grandpa. And well, one time he came in from an outing. He came in and he was passed out on the couch. Well, I had went and done laundry over at Granny's, and so I would walk across because it wasn't that far, and I would walk from our house, and then I would go and do some of the girls' school shirts or whatever. I would sit and talk to Granny. Well, I came back to the house. I walked back to the house, so I'd already walked back and forth. Okay. Well, whenever I got in, Dennis was awake and he was sitting at the couch, and he looked he looked kind of scared. And I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Whenever I woke up from the couch, there was two black birds, two little small black birds on the coffee table just staring at me."
Oh wow.
And I said, "What?" I said, that well, one bird's bad enough. Two?" And I dropped the clothes and everything, and I ran back to Granny's house. I don't know where her car was at, why I wasn't driving our car, but I ran back to Granny's house, and I told her exactly how he said it, and she said that was starlets, and that it wasn't good. And I said, "Granny, what do you think it means?" And Granny she wouldn't. She just put her head down and she said, "I don't know." She said, "But them just sitting there and staring at him like that." The way she worded it to me back then, it wasn't any good news. He passed away a month later.
Maybe those birds knew that something. They were almost like a
Only,
harbinger of death. Like how like they say the Mothman's a harbinger of bad news or death. Maybe those
yeah,
birds were the same thing in a native region. We have a question when you're ready, so let me know when you're ready, and we got a
I'm
question
ready.
for you. Okay,
Okay.
this is from my friend Lieutenant Rick Lara. He was I think you were in his chat the night ago. This is OK Nana, Lieutenant. So this is OK Nana, aka Laura. He wants to know that if you're of Cherokee Nation, what do you have any knowledge of the Sul Kalu?
The Sukaloo.
Sukalu.
I see it on the thingy.
Okay.
Hello, Lieutenant. Um, I didn't even know that we had that name for it till watching um, Mountain Monsters, and they did that whole story on it. I
Oh
didn't even
yeah.
know the little Cherokee girl and all of that. Because there's so other many stories that I've never really delved into what Cherokee Nation had or what we have of the legends until now. In my older years, and having the computer in front of me and everything, now I know. Now I'm more knowledgeable than I was ever. I didn't know anything of, but every tribe has their own Bigfoot name. I've posted them. Cherokee, yeah, Sukaloo. Um, and then, just regular Sasquatch, or whatever. But yeah, supposedly there's even tribes that made a pacts with them. You hunt over here, and we're not going to bother your hunting areas, and we hunt over here. And and neither one of them, the Bigfoot or the natives, would break that pact. But whenever somebody would come in and break it, I guess it got bad. So
Oh yeah, they probably take a person or take an animal, take a person, take livestock, whatever they want to take. Take a baby, take a woman. Once that pack gets broke, you know they broke the
yeah,
pack. It's almost like fair game all across the board. They could do what they want and have it their way until
yeah.
they do another
But
treaty, which
most of
after
them,
so long.
yeah,
Go ahead.
most of. And I have a friend. I have a friend on here. He goes to sweat lodges. I won't say his name. He might not want his name mentioned, but their their religion, their parts is the Bigfoot come and talk to them in the sweat lodges. And I know that sounds crazy and everything. But I ain't gonna say it doesn't happen. I'm not gonna be the one who says that. And
Wow.
he said, no, they don't like it because I always tease, I'm gonna be the first one to give Bigfoot a beer. you know. And he said that they don't like beer, Laura. They don't, stuff like that. And he said, you got to be clean bodied, and I'm like, well, I used to be pretty wild and stuff, but I'm not no more. So I'm sure they're gonna know my heart,
Mm.
you know. But yeah, that was pretty scary. And I always thought that they was after me, Tom. It wasn't. It was something's gonna happen in the future, and
Yeah.
it did.
Wow.
And he passed away building a pole barn. The landowners didn't turn off the electric, and he had to work the roof. He had a bad back, and he promised he wouldn't be getting up on the roof anymore. But for some reason, he had got up on the roof that last job, and he went to go put a piece of trim up, and that trim hit a highline wire and killed him instantly.
Oh gosh.
And so, yeah, and Granny knew. Granny knew.
I'm sorry
It
about
was
that.
no surprise. And I'm just like, oh my God. And it's, you kind of get traumatized from like a survivor's guilt,
Hmm.
you know, from that, because you're just like, was I giving him messages? Could I have helped in any way? I didn't want him to pass away.
Right.
That was my girl's daddy. I loved him. I was young, but yeah, it was some bad news then. So
Well,
you want me to
yep.
tell about?
We got
Huh?
another question from David from Texas. If you want, can you read it from the computer? Can you see it?
I wish I knew, David, what town, little town that was, where we all saw, and they did the Bigfoot job. I would have to talk to, like I said, all the other men, the four other men. As far as I know, they're all still alive. Dennis is the only one that's passed away. I would have to get with one of them and find out. I want to know too, so I can put it in my account of it. I wish I knew.
Yeah. Okay.
It's been too long ago.
That's fine. Now that sweat lodge that you talked about, I told you earlier. I was in a sweat lodge when I was a kid because my uncle took me to these events. He took me to powwows. He took me to a sweat lodge. He actually did the Sundance. I told you where they hang from their chest with the
Yeah,
horns with the deer
that's
antlers. And they dance around the tree and they take peyote and go into spirit world. Well, he did all that in the early '80s, but after like '87, '88, he would take me to these places in Pennsylvania, these sweat lodges and powwows, because I'd stay with him for weekends at a time out there, and that's where he worked. So that being said, I mean, from what I remember of the sweat lodge, it was just a very strange experience. It was almost like I was hallucinating because it gets so hot in there and your body's sweating. It's almost like it's purifying you, but you have to stay in there. And I mean,
yeah,
it wasn't like a full adult style sweat lodge because they'll put some stuff inside the fire to make you kind of go into a different realm. Well, this was like a youth, because it was the guy that ran it on his property. He did it for his sons and me and some other kids that came with adults. So that being said, it was probably a more mild tone of a sweat lodge, but still it was really hot. And I just remember like almost like my body was just, I was escaping my body from what it felt like, and like just a
Yeah.
big hallucination. Like I wasn't even in the tent. Like I was, when he started putting the water on the rocks and the hot and steam came out, like I wasn't
It's
even
like
paying
your body
attention to
with
that.
the steam. Is it like your body goes with the steam and you're just
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
and everything? Oh, yeah.
and it was the
Invited. I'm invited to one, and I want to go because it's this guy. It's his friend, and he does a sweat all the time.
Mhm.
And I wish I could remember what tribe he's from, but yeah, he tells me. He said, I'll ask and see if you could, be a guest, with us. And I'm like, seriously?
yeah.
Because he knows how passionate I am about this. I mean, uh, I, I'm like that meme where the kidnappers bring you back for talking about dogs too much.
Mhm.
They're gonna bring me back because I talk about Bigfoot too much or little
Yeah,
people.
yeah. We
He
got
knows
one
that.
more question from David. Here we
Oh,
go.
okay,
Put it up, and then we could go into the little people. So, can you see
okay.
it?
Did the Bigfoot have a cone type head? Is that it?
Yep,
Is that the one?
that's it.
Um, it was like I said, it was a distance from us. I don't really remember a cone type head. Um, I will place a picture of it after it, but it was more of one of those big ones with like hardly a head at all.
Yeah, there was a no neck. They call them no necks. Haints, no necks. That's what they call them, in the South.
A big, because this was big.
This was a big old boy.
Yeah, I
All
don't
right.
really
Well,
remember a cone head at all. I just remember it looked like a dead tree to begin with.
good
Yeah.
God. Well, let's go into the little people because we're not pressed for time, but it's like 47 minutes into it. We do about an hour and 10 minutes tops. So let's start talking about the little people, and then we'll take a little more questions, and we'll finalize the interview.
We made it through.
Yeah, we made it. You made it through. You were a little nervous about it in the beginning, but you did great, and I'm very happy that you were able to get through it because if you never done this before, like I said, when I did this with Wes the first time in 2016, Wes Germer from Sasquatch Chronicles, I did it on a phone interview, and I was shaking. I was having like PTSD all over again from retelling my encounters because I never really told anybody that what happened in Canada, except for my brother that knew about it because he was with me and he was in denial. So I kind of felt like I was, on a
The
desert.
only one had
I
the
was the only
experience.
one to experience it. I was like all alone on a deserted island, and I had no one to share it with. So once I told him, I was
Yeah.
so nervous and I was talking so fast because it was like you're reliving. Everyone experiences PTSD differently, and I just did it a certain way. But let's go into the little people. Go ahead.
Okay. So let me explain the little people first. For the people, what I grew up with, and everybody grows up with different stories and different legends and their own family little people. Everybody has their own. So nothing that I'm saying is going to be a professional. I know everything about this because I don't. All I
That's all
know is
right.
what we grew up with and what Granny said and how we grew up. Um, so Granny always said every home has a protector, a little person, and as I was telling you, there could be yin and yang. You might have some because they like to play tricks. Those it's one of the stories that you read online that is really true, because you can hear anybody say, oh, I can't find my keys. They was right here, and people will just nonchalantly say, the little people hid them from you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it's nothing. It's not uncommon to hear that. And they're like, yeah, I think so. And so I'm going to get into that story. So, and knowing that each home has their protector is going to be key. That's a key point, okay? In one of the stories where I saw the little person. So Anyway, so growing up, Granny and her cousin Lizzie lived right next door to us. Well, I would take them fishing at nighttime, catfishing, and I would tell them, "Y'all tell me stories. Tell me about the little people." Some natives don't like talking about little people after dark, and but Granny never said she had problems talking about it after dark, because there would be times we would be going to bed. I would ask her for stories, and we'd be sleeping with Granny, and she'd tell us. So she never had qualms about that. Just certain people have a superstition of not talking about it after dark. We didn't have that, and so, anyways, she would say that one time her and Lizzie, they walked from everything back in the day. Her and Lizzie was walking back from a dance one time, and she said they was walking the back way and going through the trails to get back home. Well, they heard singing, and Granny said so they kind of pulled off to the side and kind of like hid themselves on the trail to see who was coming along down through there. It was just her and Lizzie, and they was young. And she said it was a group of little people coming down the trail, and they had been to a ball game. And she said that they had on little gloves, ball gloves, little little ball shoes and everything. See, they mimic our clothing. They mimic what we have. They have just in little people size. Okay. And so anyway, she said they was all dressed up, had their little bat and everything, and was just coming down the trail, coming back from a game. So she said her and Lizzie just, let them go by, and then they went on home. So it was stories like that, and feeding and keeping a biscuit out at nighttime for your protector, and making sure that your home is cleaned, protected, and give them little gifts. Like I told you, Granny would leave stuff on a stump, and it was just an old stump, but that's where she would leave it. It was never anywhere else out there, and so I hope that stump's still there. I hope it hasn't been pulled up or anything. So on my little person, okay, do you have any questions? I can't hear you.
Better? Can you
Yeah.
hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. Now I was gonna go into if anyone has questions, put them up. But I was gonna say, like, did these things remind, or were they kind of like the garden gnomes that people see, like those little statues?
Okay. I'm gonna go from what I saw. Yes, the one I saw was about 2.5 foot tall. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I guess that they're like any human being. They all vary in sizes. Before my daughter passed away recently, she had a rough life. She never got over her daddy passing away, but anyways, it got really bad in the end. She would tell me that she would see little people, because behind our house was an area that she could go to that had bad stuff, bad drugs and everything. Well, when she took off from home and she would go down the trail to this place, she would tell me that she would see a father figure one, and she said he would be dressed like a Viking mom. And she said, and there was a little sister and a brother. And she said, and that dad was always mad at her, telling her to go back to the house because he must have been her protector. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was all the drugs. And I'm like, Mandy, seriously? And I didn't want to think that because I wanted to believe her. And then at the end, I believed her. But I didn't want to think that. And she would be like, Mom, yeah. She said they knew what I was going for. And it wasn't that father figure told her, you know what you're going for. It's nothing good. Go back home. And she said the little girl would be on the ground, like she would have, like, those daisy things that you could put on your hair.
Yeah.
People twine. She'd have that and have like a little dress, like a little maid dress, and then the brother would be standing there like this next to the dad. She said the brother would always be standing next to his dad, just looking at her like, "Where you going?" And I was like, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah." She said they would run me back to the house.
Wow.
And so because they knew it wasn't going to be good for her. So she did have some that was helping her at the end. And I know it was, you know, those were her peoples that protected her, because she could walk that whole holler, and you don't walk Piney Holler. She would walk that whole holler at nighttime, and it didn't faze her a bit. She wasn't scared of nothing, and they protected her. So get into on mine. Back whenever I saw mine, I was on a whiskey trip, but it was in the morning, and I hadn't been anywhere. I hadn't been to town or anything. Well, my mom calls me, and uh, mom had got with this guy, and his dad was a medicine man. Okay. And when I say medicine man, he knew medicine. He practiced it. He was one of the hard medicine mans. Well, he lived in his dad's old place, and mom lived there with him. Well, he would tell me that the little people, his little people, didn't like the company that was coming to see mom because of the things that they would bring. And so, anyways, he would tell me, he said, "Yeah, your mom's always coming up with money missing. Or she was going to go buy something bad. Money would be missing, or they would hide it from her." And I would just laugh because, it was pretty funny, because she'd be all mad and she couldn't find none of her stuff. And that's what they was doing. And so she called me up, and she wanted to do something that day. She wanted me to bring some movies over and stuff, and I was like, "Okay, well, let me get around, and I'll be over there here in a minute." And I had a big Dodge extended cab truck, and I remember pulling into his little bitty driveway. And it's just a little bitty white house, just a small white house. And over on this side, is his rick of wood stacked, and over here is his truck, and then the porch, and just a little house. Well, mom liked yard sales. She was constantly picking up stuff at the yard sale places, and you never knew what she would send home with you. Well, whenever I pulled up, I saw this Elvis doll on the wood stack, and it was the way it was put, where she had put it on the wood pile. It was like facing the home, like it was looking into the bedroom window. And I'm like, "Well, that's strange. That's a cute little Elvis doll." And so I go in and I said, "Hey, how I say my hellos?" And I said, "Mom, where'd you get that little Elvis doll out there? You're always finding all kinds of stuff, And I'm just like, "That's something she found." And she said, "What? What do you mean? What little Elvis doll?" And I said, "The one out there on the wood pile that you got out there, just by itself, standing on the wood pile." And Martin raises her boyfriend raises his head, and he's like, "What?" And he said, "Come show me where." And I'm like, "Oh, well, come on, And so I go back out, and they're following me, and I turn to point at the wood pile. It's gone. It's gone. I had just walked in, said my hellos, was telling them, "That's a cute little Elvis doll." And Martin said that he said, you saw one of our little people's. And another thing, it's supposed to be bad superstition. If you see one, it's supposed to be bad on you, but it wasn't meant for me. And it looked at me and everything. It never moved. It was facing me. And like I said, but the way it was stood, it would have been facing the window, but I saw it. It had the little sideburns and everything. This sounds crazy. I know, and you don't have to believe me. But
No, that's crazy. If it looked like Elvis, I mean, it had to take pretty good care of itself to get to look like Elvis. You know.
It had the little clothes on and
Wow.
everything. I
What
thought
did you?
Mom
Is
had
there a
a little
name? Is there a Cherokee name for these things?
I'm sure there is.
You just don't know it.
Just call them little people.
Yeah,
The rock people.
rock people.
That's what the Cherokees pretty much called them, was rock people. But I'll get the Cherokee name for them. Um,
Maybe they lived under the rocks. Maybe like they had like little caverns under the rocks. That's why they called them rock
well,
people.
that's what I'm saying. The hill that's never going to be the same, where they put the new road at by my house, is
Mm-hmm.
because they built over the caves underneath the mound. This
Right.
mound of dirt and stuff was the rocks in the caves, and they had put the new road up that, and they had built over their home. That's why it's never going to be good again.
Oh wow.
They
So
can't ever fix that road.
they disturb their home so that it'll never be right because they just
Yeah.
keep messing with it.
And I
Cool.
know that sounds crazy a little. Oh yeah, she's all up. She was drunk. No, I wasn't, but I went and got a bottle after that.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, hell no. I can't
Mhm.
believe I already saw, I just couldn't believe it. And I'm like, oh my God. And we talked about that all day long. And I was like, it was the cutest thing. I wasn't scared, and I'm still not scared of because, it wasn't there for me. It was watching over his house because it wanted to know who was being brought in there. And like I said, his dad did medicine, so he had some strong protectors there. Well, this one just happened to be a fan of Elvis Presley.
Guess so. Yeah. The lieutenant says. Rick says the Yunwi Sundi is what the Cherokee legend calls them. Yunwi Sundi or Chuzundi.
Well, that could be it. Yeah,
Or that's what he probably looked it up. He Lieutenant, Rick, he knows a lot, and if he doesn't know something, he'll find it out, and he probably found it out.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, Lieutenant, because I mean, I just know them as little people, and I've got a four series I posted in our group before of them, and I'm sure all the names that was given to them from different tribes are in those, but it explains them all, and but it's a 4-part series, and if y'all want me to post them again, I can. I even
That'd
have
be great. That'd be
picture
great.
illustrations for it. Huh?
That'd be great if you could post them. Yeah, Rick said, the old country they call them fairies, brownies, gnomes, goblins,
Yeah.
leprechauns, pixies. But in the Americas, they're also called puckwudgies and duendes. So that's other
Mhm.
terms that they're called. By different people in different areas. So there's names all over. Like just like Abe says, trolls too. But trolls can be big too. Trolls can be like these huge,
Yeah.
huge things that
Yeah.
are
Totally
30 feet
different.
tall. I mean,
Little
trolls
people.
aren't
Yeah.
just little. Yeah, trolls can be huge. They
Yeah.
can be like 30-foot tall. Bigger than a mountain giant. So,
Yeah. And I don't know the guy's name. I'm pretty sure he's in here. He has the Dogman group. Anyways, he messaged me last night, and he said he's asking me about the little people, and he said that he had read about a story about the guy in the Philippines, where they had the mean little people, and those was just little bitty people. I said that's not the little people that I'm talking about. I said, I know what you're talking about. This man went to prison over it, and those were some mean, bad spirit ones, bad. All of them's bad, and cannibals, and and everything. I said, that's not the little people I'm talking about. So there's like Bigfoot, there's different tribes of things. You've got your trolls, you've got your little people, you've got your fairies, and you've got all the other names, that could be, totally different. From what I always do, it was little people, or, the rock people.
that's good to know.
So,
What part?
and
What part?
sure Granny
You
could
live in?
tell you, just spit it right out in Cherokee, the whole sentence of the little people. I never did learn. I wish I did.
You're on the Texas-Oklahoma border, right? Pretty much between both states.
Huh?
You're on the Texas-Oklahoma border.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I am. Yeah. When you get into Sherman, and you go right off 69 into Oklahoma. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I think we're gonna cut it off right now. I did appreciate you coming on. We can always do this again. We can get some more information. We didn't really get to share anything people told you, so we can, next time we do this, you can bring some encounters up because you are given encounters from people in your area. Is that correct?
I'm gonna start gathering encounters.
Okay.
Whenever I go home and I have a vehicle, I'm gonna start visiting uh, our elders in the area. I'm gonna start with my elders to begin with, and then I'm just gonna make my rounds and go into the backwoods, and I'm gonna do some groundwork and get some stories on record, because little people do exist.
Yeah.
Families do have protectors. Um, Bigfoot is out there. I don't need anybody to believe anything that I've told. I saw it for myself. Uh, but yeah, all this happens, and you just got to be careful. Now I know all this stuff, so thank you so
No,
much. I'm sorry.
thank you. There is more than Bigfoot out there. I mean, you got the Dog
Oh,
Man, the
that's
Noshobashito, Skinwalker,
oh
shapeshifters.
yeah.
I mean, you got all
Uh,
that stuff.
I could go on and on about the shapeshifters, because Granny would kill owls. She had a and it wasn't, she's out there just killing owls for a reason either. She had her reason, and anyways, she could just tie a knot and just kill them. And she would say that they were shapeshifters.
Yeah, well,
And then that
Mexican
owl,
folklore.
that big old owl outside would stop like that. And then one time I watched her split a storm. Yeah,
Wow.
she did her magic or whatever, and she split a storm. But thank you. I could just go on and on, but
No,
that's what I.
we're definitely gonna have you on again because we didn't even top the icing. So next time we can start off with Granny, the whole stuff with that and the encounters that people are giving you because people you're going out there getting these encounter stories from the people that that don't like to
Yeah,
talk
I'm
to
gonna do that.
they don't like to talk to the outsiders. So you are the insider.
Mhm.
They trust you.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to do my part on that, and it needs to be said. It needs to be told, and it
Yeah.
needs to be. People need to know. It's gonna mess up their little safe zone in their mind, but it has to be told.
Yeah, the people have to be woke. They have to know the truth. The truth is out there,
Yeah,
and the truth will
yeah,
set you free. Because I mean, you can't be in denial about this stuff because it's only going to get more. I'm not going to say it's going to get worse, but there's going to be a lot more things happening in the next couple months to years where disclosure and more encounters, and people are going to start seeing a lot of these things, and they're not going to know what the hell's going on. Well, if they start listening now and getting some knowledge from all these groups out, yeah, putting the
yeah.
truth out, spitting truth, and the government's not telling you the truth. So we got to do what the government can't do. Well, that's it is what it is. So people just need
Yeah.
to get with it, get with the times because things are changing. We're living in the days of Noah, and that's all I can say.
But we have good, good people on the alien parts that's helping us, and you know that.
Hmm.
And then we have good people who can do like remote viewing and all of that and stop what's coming. Uh,
Exactly.
so we do have some good on our side, and you just got to do the good, be the good, share the good, and that's why I say that all the time in my groups. Every day, do all the good you can,
Hmm.
and that energy's got to that we're gonna everybody's waking up, and people are using their senses now, and we're gonna beat this evil. Yes.
Well, it was an honor and a pleasure to have you on tonight. And if I did kind of run over you a little bit, I'm sorry. I think you're the way. I don't know if it's your internet, if there's a delay between me and you, but it seems like when you're stopped talking, I think you are, and then I'll talk. So if I did cross over a couple times, I am sorry. Like I said, that there's got to be a delay with your side and my side, maybe your internet. But I'm definitely going to have you on for a part 2 because we just, like I said, we just topped the icing on the cake. So we're going to do this again, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think everybody in the group's going to want to see the stories that you posted with the like the
Yeah,
little people
yeah.
stuff.
I'll get those. I'll
Tribes.
get those right up here in a second.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. You all have a great night. And if anybody missed the show tonight, this is going to get uploaded to YouTube as well. And if anybody has any encounters they want to share, they want to be on the show or whatever, or they just want to tell their encounters, feel free to instant message me on Messenger or Tom Cardos1, one word, at gmail.com. You can send me an email. You can be discreet about, if you're scared to come up front on like what Laura's doing. And I could just, go over your encounters that way. So, but everybody have a great night. Thanks for listening, and God bless. Take care.
Bless.